Hi, thanks for joining us. We're lucky today to have former England high performance coach David Parsons joining us. David gives us great insight into high performance in sport and business. So I hope you really enjoy. Thank you. Dave, great to see you. How are you keeping?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Strange times, but yeah, all good. It's good that the sun's out and we're able to get outside now and do a bit of exercise. So, no, I'm well, thanks, Darren. You?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. Like I say, weather's good, and hopefully we're getting a little bit nearer to some cricket.
Yeah, let's hope so. Hopefully, it won't be too far away now.
No, that's right. Dave, just thanks for coming on to the show. And just first of all, could you just tell us a little bit about your journey and where how you've got to where you are today?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, obviously, mad passionate sports fan as a kid, as everybody is. With I guess football and cricket has been my two main loves, along with athletics. Yeah, played all sports as a youngster. Used to watch Warwickshire from the stands at Edgbaston with the 70s and 80s. Played a bit of Warwickshire under-19 cricket as an off-spin bowler. Played for a couple of local clubs in Birmingham, Kings Heath and West Bromwich Dartmouth. But that was really the kind of the limit of my playing ability. I was a reasonable club cricketer, but no better than that, really. And then in about 1993, I started training as a teacher. And whilst training as a teacher, I started doing a bit of coaching as well and supporting Warwickshire with some of their community coaching programs and a little bit of coach education. And then when I left university, Warwickshire offered me a job as cricket development officer initially, then cricket development manager later. Looking at schools programs, club programs, coach education, some of the Warwickshire age group squads, including seeing a 10-year-old Moeen Ali coming for trials with Warwickshire under 11s back in the day. That was before he had the beard. And then I worked for Warwickshire for 5 years. In 2000, I moved over to the ECB and became what was then known as a national coach, which effectively had two parts to that role. One was working with some of the regional age group squads with England under 15s and under 16s, but then also working much more in coach education and starting to deliver the level 3s and then beginning to get into the level 4. And it was during that time that I, in particular, started specialising in spin bowling.
Yeah.
And got to know Terry Jenner really well and spent a bit of time in Australia with him and effectively became the ECB's go-to person for spin bowling development. And so then in 2005, roughly, they offered me the job as lead spin bowling coach.
Yeah.
And the responsibilities of that job was to oversee the development of spinners, but in particular to work with the spinners at the top end of the game. So spinners in the England team and in what was in the National Academy. And then when Duncan Fletcher finished with England, Peter Moores, who was my boss at the National Academy, he moved to become England coach for the first time. And I took over initially in an interim role, but as National Academy Director, which then became Performance Director, and then spent the next 12 years as Performance Director, finishing after the World Cup last summer. And that role initially was quite narrow. It was to oversee the Performance Centre at Loughborough University. It was also to coach head coaching the England Lions team and oversee the development of young players. But then over time, and especially when Andy Flower then moved down from England into that Lions setup, my role became a bit more strategic and less coaching and a bit more leadership and strategy. So I oversaw the Performance Centre at Loughborough, the age group programs, but then began to oversee county academies as well, science and medicine network, the way in which we identified players. So a much broader, wider strategic role in the last few years.
Yeah.
And as I say, that finished after we won the World Cup. Nice way to sort of go out last summer. And since then, I've been acting as a consultant. A lot of that work has been in sport, not all of it in cricket, some in some other environments as well. But that sort of brings us pretty much up to date, where I'm now working with a number of different teams, both inside and outside of sport.
Yeah, great. So, Dave, you like I say, spent quite a long time in the high performance role of England. During that time, you won 2 World Cups. You got to #1 in every format at some stage of a game. So, how when you got into that sort of role, what would be the sort of first things you'd look at, and how would you go about reorganising an organisation, basically?
Yeah, so as you say, obviously I've been really fortunate to, and it does feel like some bizarre dream sometimes, but it's certainly a privilege to be able to observe and to witness some outstanding times really with England cricket. Both, I guess, two obvious periods are with Andy Flower's time when he was head coach, during that period when probably 2008 to 2012-13, where England won the 2020 World Championship in 2010.
Yeah.
And it was great to be part of that, and to have some of the young Lions players that have gone out to the Lions squad, people like Craig Kieswetter and Michael Lum had gone out to that England Lions squad and went and played a really important role in England winning that tournament. And then to be able to see England winning in India for the first time in goodness knows how many years, and to be beating Australia in the Ashes in Australia for the first time in many years, to be able to witness that at close quarters was, felt like a real privilege.
Yeah.
And then likewise to be able to see at relatively close hand the progress that the one-day side has made in the last 4 years to culminate in winning that World Cup was fantastic. So some great learning experiences there, and some great people to learn from, coaches that I've worked with, but also the members of my team at Loughborough. And so I guess all I've tried to do is just take some of those lessons and offer some of those lessons up to some other sports and to some other environments. And I've been very fortunate to go and do a review of Pakistan cricket last autumn.
Yeah.
I've done a big review, or chaired a panel that did a big review of British canoeing, for example. I've done some work with UK Sport at looking at equestrian as an example. And I do think that some of the principles of high performance are quite transferable across sports. Obviously, every sport, first thing every sport says to me, well, of course, you won't get this sport. It's really unique. Well, obviously, every sport is unique, and I fully understand that. But I do think that there are certain principles that you do see that are common to any environment, certainly sporting environments, where they're looking to have high performance. So there'll be things like that I would look for when I'm doing a review of an organisation. How clear are they on their vision and their strategy for success? Do they understand what Olympic sports often call their "what it takes to win" model? But do they understand what their senior teams or their senior performers are going to need to be able to do to be successful on the international stage? And then can they track that back through their pathways to be able to identify quite clearly what potential looks like at the various stages of development? The other thing which I think is quite important in high performance systems is how aligned and engaged is the whole of their network. So you think about England cricket, for example, and although it has had success, oftentimes we're talking about this disconnect between the county game and the international game. And I think where you see really effective high performance systems, the domestic game and the national game are really aligned behind this vision for the national team. So that's another thing that I would look for.
Yeah.
And then I guess the fourth thing that I would look for is the people that they have in those leadership positions. What is the quality of those people, and how effective are those people being both in leadership and in coaching? So I guess 3 or 4 things that I think are transferable across all environments that I would look for, or certainly I've been looking for when I've worked with Pakistan and with canoeing and with other sports.
Yeah. How would you say high performance has changed since you've started? Obviously, I'm guessing a lot of internet-based changes.
Yeah, well,
go on, sorry.
Yes, certainly. So, I mean, when I started, I mean, coaching is still a relatively new profession. If you think it wasn't that long ago, actually, that people like Mickey Stewart and then David Lloyd, the first coaches really that got involved with the England team. and they would have had a manager alongside them and a physio, and that would have been it. And then, so I suppose slowly over the last 20 years or so, the amount of specialist support that players can tap into has increased rapidly. It's probably stabilised now, but if you look at certainly the sports science and medicine disciplines of psychology, biomechanics, strength and conditioning, physiotherapy, massage therapy, etc., a whole load of support for players. The advent, of course, of performance analysis and the use of data and a lot of the decision making that's made around selection and player development. Then also the amount of specialist coaching support for players. Yeah. Not only do players now have a head coach and an assistant coach, you have specialist fast bowling, batting, spin bowling, wicket keeping, fielding coaches. So the amount of support that players can access now is much greater than ever it was. But I think there has also been a shift, and I think it's been quite an important shift, that the player now is much more at the centre of their own development and determining what support they need. I think for a number of years, as the amount of support that players were receiving grew, actually a lot of that support was very directive. But now there has been I guess the latest shift is for the player not only to be at the heart of those decisions, but for the player to be much more involved in that decision making as well. So the coaches and support staff are there not only to offer expertise and guidance, but also to respond to the players' needs.
Yeah, Dave, just going off that a little bit, do you think there can be too much support staff? I mean, I've spoke to coaches, obviously, and coaches we've represented in international setups, and they've said sometimes we've been in a changing room and people have been wandering around and we haven't even known who they are. So you've obviously lose that little bit of intimacy, and I think you're right. Making it player centered is excellent. It's what's needed rather than players having to sort of fit in. But would that be a fair comment? Do you think there sometimes is too much?
Well, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I mean, what is, we've had this deal. I mean, I've had this discussion over a number of years when I was involved with ECB with England, and this accusation from time to time that players are mollycoddled and it's too easy for players and they don't have to make decisions on their own. And I think it's not necessarily about numbers, because if you look at each of those individual members of staff, and I didn't mention that list earlier, performance nutritionists, for example, or performance lifestyle advisor, or a clinical psychologist, all of those roles bring great expertise that they can offer to players. And I think the level of that expertise is greater now than it's ever been. But the way in which that expertise is delivered and the timing of that, and you're right, almost a very physical nature of that. And if you're sitting in a dressing room with 15 members of the support team and just 11 players, something that doesn't feel quite right about that. Yeah. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but I do think you have to be very aware as a head coach or as a leader when you're looking to choose your support team. You're not just thinking about the amount of expertise you do have to be very aware of the impact that those numbers will have upon the environment and the culture that you're trying to create. And I think to give Trevor Bayliss great credit, he's still engaged and involved the same members of the support team. What he was able to do very skillfully, I think, is to ensure that the players are still responsible for driving performance and driving their development, not the staff.
Yeah. And just going on to your history with the England team, which players and coaches have really stood out and have been an influence to you?
Well, I think I mentioned Moeen Ali earlier on as being a young player that I saw with Warwickshire, and it was great that my days with Warwickshire, seeing the young Chris Wokes coming through the system there. And it's oftentimes only on reflection now that you recognise those players. When you look at them now, having had great careers. I saw your talk with Jim Fountain the other day, and I remember when I first started with Warwickshire, Jim Fountain, Ian Bell was still in the Warwickshire under-19s, and you look on 20 years later now, and you see the fantastic careers that they've had. But from my personal perspective, I guess a couple of players spring to mind that I can look back on now with some degree of, I guess, satisfaction and pride. And I think about taking a young 14-year-old Adil Rashid to Australia. He was a fantastic leg spinner who, taken wickets in senior cricket and was clearly a remarkable talent. And the things that he could do with the ball were just extraordinary. And I took him to Australia to go and work with Terry Jenner for a couple of weeks. And Terry was Shane Warne's coach. And I learned a huge amount from Terry, but I'll come back to him in a second. And having that opportunity for a few years to work with Adil Rashid as a young developing coach, working with a young developing player was great for me. I suppose my big breakthrough from a coaching perspective came around 2005-06. Pete Moores had asked me to go and work with the academy as a spin bowling coach, and I'd come across people like Gareth Batty and Mike Yardy and Jamie Dalrymple, Alex Loudon, players that had some exposure to England, and I learnt lots from them, probably far more than they learned from me. It was great to be working with those guys. And then Pete and Duncan Fletcher, who was England coach at the time, introduced me to a young guy called Monty Panesar. And I worked with Monty for a couple of years. Monty had just got into the England team. And if you remember, he had a huge impact when he first got into the team.
Yeah.
And it was my real privilege to work with him for a couple of years. I learned lots from watching him. Again, an extraordinary gift that he had for the spinning ball. An extraordinary work ethic, a real passion for the game. And those first couple of years that I was working with him, when he had great success in the England team, I then moved on. And I look back on those times with great satisfaction.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in my time as head coach of the England Lions and as performance director, pretty much every player that went on to go and play for England came through that program at some stage. It's inevitable that they're going to, because they were the best players already, and we were just fortunate to pick them up and to provide them with some more experiences.
Yeah.
And so when you see England winning the World Cup last year, you see Mark Ward and Chris Wokes and Liam Plunkett and all of these guys doing so well, Johnny Bairstow and others doing so well for England, and to know that you've got some sort of a personal relationship with them because they came through something that you happen to be leading historically. I think that's a really nice, satisfying feeling. In terms of coaches, I mean, two other than Terry Jenner, who for me he was the first spin bowling coach really for me that tried to break down into really simple terms the technical components of bowling spin. And prior to that point, all the feedback I'd had from coaches about spinners, it was almost some sort of mystical, magical art. And then Terry was able to make sense of it and help break down bowling spin into some manageable sort of key coaching points that coaches could work with. But also he was able to put a coaching methodology together that I was able to work with, and people, after me, people like Peter Such have been able to work with, that have given them a way of improving the way in which spinners bowl. So Terry Jenner was a huge influence. The biggest influence, I think, really was probably Peter Moores. And then it was Pete that first recognised something in me as a coach. And he was the first person to get me involved working with senior adult cricketers. And he's continued to be a real source of inspiration. His passion, the way he thinks about the game, the genuine, I mean, he and others like people like Mark Robinson use the word love, which is a strong, powerful word, and you don't necessarily associate that to describe the coach-player relationship. They talk about that real empathy and affection and caring that coaches have to have for the players that they're working with.
Yeah.
And Pete was fantastic in that regard.
Yeah.
And then Andy Flower, who I was fortunate enough to work with when he was England coach and I was performance director, then got to know even more when he came down to the Lions setup, and to obviously see the fantastic knowledge he has of the game from both being a player and as a coach, and also the real clarity with which he sees the game and what players need to do to improve. And I learned lots from Andy also. And then, of course, I was very, very lucky. I had a good team of coaches. People like Kevin Shine and Graham Thorpe, massively committed coaches. They just care greatly about the players that they're working with. And I think sometimes that really is underestimated, how much these coaches care the development of those players. And when players do well, they feel, you feel this warm glow and satisfaction. When players are injured or you see them not performing particularly well on the field, that hurts coaches. Yeah. I think sometimes that doesn't go. That's not noticed.
Sure. And you mentioned job satisfaction earlier. I'd imagine there was no greater job satisfaction than England winning the World Cup last year, and you've been a part of that and culminating in all the work that you've done. Tell me a bit about your thoughts and on just that incredible day, really.
Well, it was a really weird time for me because obviously I knew I was leaving.
Yeah.
I knew I was leaving a week later, and I was down at Lord's, and I was sat with a few of the other staff that were with me at Loughborough and still are, and all the way through that game, it was such an emotional pendulum from yes, we're going to win it, no, we're going to lose it, and just that constant swinging of the game. And I actually watched a video clip package yesterday back from the final, and it still brings out that same emotion because it was such a fantastic day. And look, it makes it all the more meaningful, doesn't it? When it's such a tight finish and it's so emotional, it makes it all the more meaningful. But really, I was just so pleased for English cricket because English cricket needed that. For all sorts of reasons, it needed that shot in the arm, and hopefully, notwithstanding the circumstances that we're going through at the moment, hopefully we can continue English cricket continue to build on that legacy. Then at a personal level, to see people out there on the field that I know reasonably well, and to be so pleased for them and what they've achieved. And then at a very personal level, knowing that I was leaving, for me to be able to walk away from that role with a degree of satisfaction, to know that actually that sort of brought the journey to a close and gave me a real sort of impetus and momentum to go on to the stuff that I'm doing now. Knowing that I had a really good crack at that job, and I was hugely privileged to have done something that I could only have dreamt about doing 20 years ago. But to look back on that now, and to see the insights I've been able to have by watching that journey. And I started scribbling down the other day some of the legendary players that I've been fortunate to meet, and to not necessarily call my friends now, but to be able to call acquaintances and colleagues. People like Graham Gooch and Shane Warne I've met and spoken to, Sikhlain Mushtaq Ahmed, Mutar Maruthan, players that, absolute legends. And through some bizarre privilege, I've had to be able to go and spend time with them and to learn from them, and really to have a real insight into what it takes to be an outstanding cricketer in just the most enormous.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned a couple of Pakistan players there. You've obviously made quite an impact with Pakistan. Of course, Wasim Khan, the Pakistan managing director, he's had you over to help set up new systems for them. And it seems like Wasim's doing a great job in getting Pakistan cricket moving forward. So tell us a little bit about that, Dave, and again, what input you've had and how you see the Pakistan game progressing.
Well, obviously, for the last 10 years or so, it hasn't been possible to go to Pakistan because international teams haven't been allowed to go and tour there. So in my ECB role, it was the one full-member nation that I hadn't been able to visit.
Yeah.
And so when I finished with ECB, and I knew Wasim from days gone by with Warwickshire and playing league cricket against Wasim. And he was aware of what I'd done with ECB, and he invited me to go over and just to have a look at their high performance system. Wasim had when he took that job on as managing director or chief exec, he had 2 or 3 ambitions really. And one of those was to get international cricket back to Pakistan, which he'd succeeded in doing. Another one was to get the PSL back to Pakistan, Super League back to Pakistan, which he'd succeeded in doing. He then wanted to restructure the whole high-performance system to enable the Pakistan senior men's team to be consistently successful on the world stage. Obviously, lots of sporadic success over the years.
Yeah.
Lots of world-class players that you would drip off the tongue. Wasim Akram, Waqar Younis, Mushtaq Ahmed, Javed Miandad, Imran Khan, all these guys that are legends of the game. never really had a system that consistently produced that success.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that Wasim had done was restructure the domestic game and have 6 regional teams that would be competing for their first-class trophy.
Yeah.
And the next thing he wanted...
That would have that obviously come up against quite a lot of opposition as well in the first place.
Well, it did, but if I think about how long it takes to get any changes to the English first-class system, through all the various committee structures and for board approval, etc., etc., Wasim managed to do that in 6 months. He managed to turn around their first. So, irrespective of the opposition, somehow he's managed to get that through quite quickly. And then the next thing that he wanted to do was to look at, okay, so what are the development programs, talent development programs that sit underneath their first-class system? So they're, if you like, their regional academies. And then what about their national programs? What about their under-19s, their A-team? How do we prepare players for the specific demands of international cricket? And so that was my remit, really, was to go in and give them some advice as to how they could structure that. And one of the first things that I recommended is that they needed some clear and consistent leadership. So I helped them put some job specifications and job descriptions together for some key leadership positions. And this week they've obviously announced the appointments of those positions. And that really is just another small step on the way to developing this system that is going to enable them to be more successful consistently. It's going to take time, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly, there will be challenges because there are cultural and political challenges in Pakistan that I'm sure they're not unique to Pakistan, but they will certainly have to overcome if they're going to be successful. And hopefully, these 4 appointments will be useful. And then the next thing that they've asked me to be involved in is help them to draw up a national framework, which effectively is a set of guiding principles for everybody that's involved in developing, their elite players. What is it that's unique about Pakistan and the way they play their cricket? What is their ambition? What are the sorts of players that they're going to need to enable them to achieve their ambition? What does that potential look like further down the pathway? Therefore, what impact is that going to have on the way in which they are going to so that's a piece of work that I'll help them with. But it's great for me to go into another environment, to another culture, and also it's very reassuring to know that some of those lessons that I learned in my time with England cricket are actually quite transferable into quite a different environment. Certainly not looking to impose the English system on Pakistan. That definitely wouldn't work. Yeah. If you can just take the principles behind which England cricket has been successful, or Australian cricket, or New Zealand rugby, or whatever it happens to be, take those principles and apply them to the unique context that Pakistan cricket, and hopefully we'll have a chance of being successful.
Yeah, great. So, I mean, since you've left England, you've already got some fantastic stuff on your CV, with an international flavour, different sports, as we mentioned as well, and your consultancy business obviously flying. But in terms of we've talked a lot about transferable skills. You'd expect that this would work well in business as well. So, is that something you're looking to do to help businesses away from sport as well?
Yeah, I think so. I do think, as I said, I do think those principles are transferable into other environments. Yeah. And certainly, I'm beginning to expand that range from obviously initially English cricket, and then staying in cricket, but looking into another environment like Pakistan. Yeah. Beginning to look into other sports, and obviously I've done some work in some other Olympic sports, which has been fun. Also done some work with some leaders in education as well, which is again has been great for me to get some experience of some other environments. But hopefully some of those lessons that I've been able to share and some of the skills that I've been able to take into their environments hopefully be mutually beneficial as well. So if there's an opportunity then to keep expanding that range and to look into other environments where leaders are looking to get outstanding performance out of their teams, we think some of those principles are quite transferable.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we do quite often get you know, we have companies approach us about a lot of the sporting clients and looking for their insight into what was successful. And they, you know, a lot of major companies believe that the same principles that have worked in sport are working for their businesses. So I definitely think I think it's something you could certainly offer a lot of people in the future going forward.
Yes.
Okay, Dave, well, listen, thank you very much for your time. It's a fascinating interview, great insight into a lot of different sides of the sport there. And thanks for coming on the show. We'll hopefully catch you soon.
Pleasure, Darren. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you very much, David. That was really excellent insight into the world of high performance in sport and business. Thanks for listening, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe. Bye.